This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So, let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everybody, welcome back to Only the Strong Survive. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and today we've got an incredible guest, Julie McQueen. Julie is the president and CEO of CarbonTV, the largest streaming OTT network for outdoor content, where she's spent the last 6 years leading strategy, operations, and growth. Beyond that, Julie is an incredible advocate for conservation, empowerment, and well-being, whether it's through Carbon Unwind, her meditation app designed around nature, or as a host of Outdoor Weekly, where she covers the latest trends in the outdoor world. So first of all, Julie, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you.
So this is a first. Normally when we talk to people, they're in an office or at their house in their living room. Tell us where you are right now. Where are you while we're having this conversation?
Yeah, you can probably see this moving behind me. I'm actually in a wall tent in southern Arizona right now. We set up these wall tent camps all around the place so that we can hunt in different areas. My fiance is a houndsman, so we basically bring the whole farm with us. I've got all of my chickens, our mules, all the dogs, everyone's here.
Very cool. And what are you guys hunting? What's the goal for this trip?
It's mountain lion season in Arizona. So it's a little bit later in the season, but they run on a quota basis for lions in Arizona. So up where our ranch is, a lot of those units have shut down. They've already taken enough lions. So we're down in southern Arizona. The units are still open down here. So we've been lion hunting.
I want to get into all this. Lion hunting sounds totally intense, so that's cool. When you and I first met through Beth Brennan at Tread Agency, you were living in Detroit and you were running this OTT channel. And now you're living in Arizona, still running it. You're on a mountain lion hunt while we're doing a podcast interview. So you have this like kind of insane, like almost comic book level life of like adventures. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you find yourself here? How did you get involved in TV production, in the outdoor industry? You know, what got you to the point where you're talking to us from a tent in southern Arizona on a lion hunt?
Well, for about 20 years now, I've been just going with the flow in the outdoor industry, and it's taken me to some pretty incredible places. I kicked it off as a producer, so behind the camera, following people on their hunts and adventures, documenting for TV shows and commercials, kind of just worked my way up through that from being behind the camera. I've hosted, I think, 4 or 5 different TV shows at this point, and then the time was just right about 6 or 7 years ago for me to move into more of a corporate role, which I still do some of the original work behind the camera. I still produce a little bit here and there, but I took over the TV network, I want to say early 2018. And, it just really made sense. It was a natural progression for me to kind of move into that space. Coming from a producer background, I brought a lot of knowledge with me into that role. As you can see, I still am in the field all the time. And thank goodness for technology, because, now you can kind of run a company from anywhere. Doesn't matter where you're at, as long as you have Starlink or good cell service. It's pretty simple.
That's really cool. So you took over an outdoor-focused TV network in 2018. We all know 2 years later, things really started changing, but also kind of growing on the outdoor side. What was that experience like? Was that good, hard? How was that?
It was actually good for our business after the beginning. So in 2020, when everything started kind of getting more difficult for a lot of industries and a lot of companies, a lot of people, well, I would say almost all people stayed home and streaming services went up. So for us, it was good. Obviously, a lot of people became more interested in the outdoors and leading more sustainable lives. So the content that we provide at CarbonTV became more valuable. So it was an interesting time, but, on the flip side of that, as a media company, all media went dark, as you know. So we had to pivot just like everybody else. Thank goodness we didn't have to let anybody go. We kept our full staff just by pivoting and coming up with a new idea. That's when we started a sleep and meditation app based around the study of ecopsychology, so our connection to nature and the outdoors. So we kept everyone on staff. Everyone switched over to start working on that project. And then when things normalized and became a little more stable, we went right back to full focus on CarbonTV. It was interesting, but, for us, it was actually a positive experience overall. Traffic went up, more people started streaming the content that we provide. So it was kind of a blessing.
So that leads to another question I really wanted to ask you, which is the OTT thing, streaming platforms, it seems totally normalized now. And I would say at our little company, I think we have maybe 2 people on staff, because I asked at a staff meeting not too long ago, that still have like traditional cable cable. So everybody is using a Roku or an Apple TV, and they have their choice of streaming apps there and channels that they like. But when you started this, that was not nearly as understood or well known. So first of all, like, what did you think of it when you got involved with Carbon TV? And then how did you approach major brands? Because I know you have some amazing brands to support you guys on your channel. How did those early conversations go before this became sort of normalized?
Yeah, so we've been around for over 10 years, I think going on 11 years now, which is very early in the outdoor space for anything digital. We were very much one of the front runners in the digital space. I have a business partner at Carbon TV, and he was the mastermind behind everything in the beginning. He kind of saw the future, that this is where things are going to go, and he developed Carbon TV as well as Carbon Media Group, which was connected to us at the time. So a very large media conglomerate. Back then, the business structure was a little bit different. It was a streaming network, it was OTT, AVOD, but it was much smaller, much more niche. So when I took over the company in 2018, I just kind of breathed new life into it, built some more teams around it, kind of rethought out the vision for the company. Instead of just hunting and fishing, which is still our major passion, it really is a huge part of what we still do. We branched out and started diversifying our content library to include pretty much everything that happens outside. There's a huge crossover audience there between people who like to hunt and like to fish and people who also are into agriculture and survival and cooking and all of these other types of outdoor content. So that was kind of a natural progression for us. But, being so early in the game definitely gave us, a lot of benefits. We've remained the largest over the years, but it takes a lot of dedication. It takes a really smart team to keep that growth and to keep that growth sustainable, where we're not growing at a pace where we can't keep up with it, but also growing at a pace where it's just constantly evolving in smart ways.
How do you acquire content? Because I know like the traditional TV model going back, 50 years or whatever is mostly there were networks and they would fund and finance the production of their own shows, or they would buy a show from a production company. Is that similar to your same model? How does that all work?
Well, like you said, earlier, I don't know very many people who have cable television anymore. My dad does, but I don't know anyone else who actually watches cable
Same,
TV.
my parents too.
So yeah, and there is that generation still. So part of our job is to make sure that what we're doing is easily accessible. So the people who have been watching cable television their whole lives, they can easily start moving over to what we're doing. The way we acquire content is most of it comes to us. Actually, we have hundreds and hundreds of producers and content creators every year who reach out and want to be a part of what we're doing. Unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to bring all of it on, so we're very selective in the show's quality of content, the types of content that we bring on. I think we bring on 40 to 50 new shows a year, which is a really, smart number for us. It's sustainable, the team can manage it, because we also work a lot on the marketing side of those shows, the social media, cross promotion, all of the support that comes with what we do. So we basically, see those shows that are coming in that are pitching to us wanting to air on Carbon. We interview them. I talk to every single one of them personally and just kind of get a feel for what they're doing, what their goals are, how we can be a part of it. A lot of times it's a great fit, and some of the times it's not a good fit. And there's other, options for the ones who aren't a good fit for us.
So if somebody has a concept for a show and they pitch it to you and you really like it, do you want the exclusive where that can only air on Carbon TV, or do they have the ability to sort of place it other places? Like, how does that model work?
Yeah, we give them the option. So I think right now we have about 25 shows that are episodic series that are exclusive to Carbon. The rest of them are non-exclusive, and we're very supportive of that. We're totally fine if it's better for them to also air on YouTube or social media or a different network. We're in support of that completely. But the ones who are exclusive with us, they just get a little bit more marketing. So they get more attention from the teams, they get higher priority in different ways. And then on the original content production side, we used to do a lot of that. When I first took over the business, there were quite a few shows that we were investing into the production. We were managing it creatively. I scaled back on that. We didn't see a huge return on the original content production. So one of the first things I did was just really scale back on, us investing into the production, because there's so much content out there that people are already creating that's very valuable, where we can just license and then distribute that for them.
Got it. And I assume you have some data on like how do people watch Carbon TV? Like what's the majority of your viewership? Is it on an actual TV or is it people streaming on a device? How does that work?
Yeah, it's really shifted over the years. So, back in the day, it was on devices, on handhelds, and we were seeing shorter retention times on those. So if somebody's watching on an iPhone, for example, I can assume they're going to watch, 12 to 20 minutes. But as we've moved into different distribution platforms, Roku, for example, is a huge one for us. More people watch on Roku than I think anywhere else, and that's
That's
pretty
me.
consistent month over month. Yeah, to me, it's the easiest app to use. It's easy to find, it's easy to download. Our features are, very top notch there. I think our retention on Roku hovers almost up near an hour and a half per session, which is huge, especially with everyone having such a short attention span these days. It's hard to keep people's attention. So when we see numbers like that, we really, hone in on that. So Roku, Apple TV is a big one. Amazon Fire, obviously does really well. 2 or 3 years ago, we started working directly with the TV manufacturers. So if you have a smart TV, like a connected device, Samsung, LG TV, and Vizio, we're preloaded into the software of those televisions.
Oh,
So that
that's
way people
cool.
don't even have to have, they don't have to have a third-party app. They can just turn on the TV, go to Walmart, buy a TV, bring it home.
As a follow-up, it's interesting because I consume a lot of content. And for me, if I'm on my phone, it's usually short form content. And then like if I go home, it's whatever's on Roku and we're watching that day or whatever. It's interesting because I have kids that are 10, 12, and 14. And for them, especially my 14-year-old, she is totally platform agnostic. Like she'll go back and forth between an iPad and a TV and her computer, doesn't care. And like short form, long form, like to me, I think because I grew up in the 80s, like if I'm going to watch TV with my wife, which is rare that we have time, but when we do, it's like a thing. Like we're going to have dinner and then we're going to sit down and we're going to watch a show. I think this, like the Gen A crew doesn't even, to them, there are no barriers. It's just like a screen
Yeah.
is a screen, and I transition, long form content, short form content. I'll follow an influencer across Instagram and YouTube. It doesn't matter to me. Like they don't care. So I wonder, like, is that something you take into account while you're trying to figure out vertical format versus horizontal format and the different like length of content? And as you move forward with this platform, how do you work on those ideas?
Yeah, we're constantly watching the data. So, for example, if we see the people on Roku are watching a certain type of content, mostly long form, so we have a lot of documentaries, short films. We also have a podcast distribution service built into Carbon. So we're just watching which devices or which type of device, what types of content they're watching, and then we market that to that group specifically. One thing that's gone really well for us is content-specific ads on Roku, for example. So if we have survival shows or DIY shows or agriculture, we'll actually very specifically market that content to people through the Roku platform. And then we go device by device. So on iPhone or Android, through those apps, we'll market more of the short form content because I know that if somebody sees a 7 to 10 minute time code, they're more likely to watch it on their handheld device.
Got it. Okay. And I guess that leads to another question I had, which is, let's say a new marketer joins a brand and they say, hey, we're redoing everything for next year. We're putting together a marketing plan. We're putting together our budgets. There used to be, in the time that I've been working in marketing, the barrier to entry for TV was so high. Any brand could probably buy a magazine ad. Eventually, like social ads totally blew up the magazine industry because it was cheaper and faster and easier. And you could kind of segment your audience a lot easier. But TV was always this other thing where it's like, hey, look, you have to be a big brand with big budgets. And it seems like that is a much easier thing to do in terms of both budget and just access. Is it just traditional commercial spots? Is it brands that are baked into the content? Do you use things like Mountain? Like I know they have their own kind of like self-service portal or not. Like how do you work with brands to integrate their storytelling into your properties and all that?
Yeah, so a few different ways. And you're absolutely right. I come from a network background. So I was airing content on the networks and selling 30-second spots around that content for years. The thing with digital is it's trackable. It's data-driven. It's scientific. We know exactly how many eyeballs are on that ad or that piece of content. Not only how many people are seeing it and watching it and actively watching it, but engaging with it. It has changed the game a lot. So when we talk to brands, and we do have some amazing brands that we work with at Carbon, it's typically very specific to their needs. So some brands are looking for brand awareness. They're not really looking for a click through. They're just wanting to to get the name out there about what they're doing, educate people about, whatever product or service they're offering. And we have programs for that. But the most popular is definitely video, pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll, and then display ads. They're highly trackable. They perform really well because we have such an endemic audience. We have a loyal audience. I mean, this is going to sound crazy. They don't have a lot of other options. So CarbonTV is the largest and one of the only networks in the outdoor space that is OTT AVOD. There's not a lot of other places where people can go watch this type of content. So we kind of have them captive in some ways, which is great for the brands because they know when they run ads on Carbon, they have people actually seeing and engaging with those ads who are their core customers.
Interesting. And as more of these brands are going direct to consumer, and I mean, not all do, still a lot of them sell through distribution and big box and stuff like that. But it seems like more and more in our industry, these brands are trying to figure out how to sell direct to consumer. A lot of times there's like affiliate stuff now. Do you guys get involved in any of that? Is that something you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of direct to consumer campaigns for brands. We're actually really good at that. And we can target specific regions, parts of the country. So for example, if it's a fly fishing brand, they're not going to want to target people who don't really easily have access to fly fishing. So we can, take those ads and make sure that people in certain areas are seeing them. And that just really improves performance. We optimize for performance in a lot of different ways, just based on what we're seeing and based on the feedback from the ads. It's become an interesting game. We're getting smarter, as every day that goes by, there's more tools available. There's really smart people who know what they're doing and how to ensure the success of all of those campaigns. But, each one is very different. We stay in close contact with all of the companies, the brands that we work with. I talk to them directly on a regular basis and just check in. Has anything changed? Do you have new products coming out? What are your goals for the year? How can we step in and help? And then we kind of do, like a full network wide deal. So instead of just running ads, we like to get very involved. So e-blasts, social media, even contextual. So getting the producers involved with them. We make introductions to our producers if they're a good fit. So I'll take, certain brands and certain producers and I'll just make introductions and then step back. And, they typically love that. That way they can kind of control the narrative. They've got, people in the field actively producing content who need this product or service that they're offering. And then the producers are then making connections with brands. So that has been a really big step up as well.
That's really interesting. Switching gears a little bit, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, you're in a senior leadership position in an industry, in kind of in two industries, right? In the outdoor industry and in the media production industry. And in both cases, traditionally pretty male dominated. So how has that been for you, both in outdoor and in kind of media, leading a network as a woman? Has that been an issue or what's that been like?
It's been great, actually. And, the male dominated outdoor industry has been good to me. For 20 years now, I've made some incredible connections and the most wonderful people who, are really there to support other outdoor brands. So as I've kind of navigated my way through, first as a field producer, camera person, TV show host, all of the different roles, it's just building those relationships and networking and making sure you have the right people around you. So when I did take on a leadership role, in CarbonTV, it was a pretty magical thing. A lot of companies that I had worked with in different ways in the past stepped up and wanted to be a part of what we're doing now. And in media, I think it is rare for a female to be in the very top position as CEO. And I'm actually in the process of becoming the majority owner of CarbonTV right now, which would make it a woman business enterprise.
Congratulations.
Which, just obvious. Thank you. Yeah. And that's where my heart is. I mean, this company is everything to me, and the people I work with and the people I work for, which is the producers. I've devoted my whole life to it. So, I want to make sure that it has a long, healthy future. And I think the best way to do that is to have the very, top control. And it's been really great. Being a female has really opened a lot of doors. It's not like the old days where I step up and people are like, oh no, be quiet, you're a girl. You don't know what you're doing. I think those days are long gone. I think there's been so many amazing, just brilliant women before me who've really paved that path and opened up all those doors. And as long as you navigate it the right way and keep the right people around you, I think that being a minority can be a really big blessing.
I love that. It seems like the outdoor industry is having kind of an interesting moment right now where kind of coming on the tail end of the COVID stuff we talked about earlier, the industry looks very different, especially on the two-way hunt and firearm side of things. But I assume, and you would know more than me in other aspects as well, but it just seems like it's very different than kind of the traditional demo that was there for decades and decades and decades. Have there been challenges in this arc for you? Obviously beyond just sort of the normal day-to-day of running a business, but in terms of you are, a minority in terms of the types of owners out there and CEOs. You're also running a business that's a newer model that some of these kind of crustier old brands may not be totally in tune with yet. So there's a lot of new here. Has that been challenging or has that been an advantage?
It has been challenging, mostly because who do you turn to for advice? Thank goodness I have, an incredible business partner who is full of good advice. Anytime I need, some help on something, he's a person who really steps up and makes sure that I have the resources available that I would need to make good decisions. When you're trying to run a business that hasn't been run before, that's constantly evolving and changing, and it can be very volatile out there. An election year makes a big difference. Gun laws make a big difference. The political atmosphere makes a big difference. So we have ups and downs every year depending on all of the things going on. One of the things that I'm responsible for is to maintain the health of the company no matter what that noise is on the side. So making sure that I'm educating myself and having the right conversations with people who know more than I do so that I'm following the vision that we've set for the company. No one else is going to do it. I'm not going to have somebody just, walk in one day and say, hey, here's something you should try. I have to be the one to come up with those ideas and the path to get there. So I would say the biggest challenge is if it was a company that had been done 1,000 times and done successfully 1,000 times, I would have a map to follow. And I could say, oh, well, they did it this way, so that must work or that must not work. It's a lot of trusting your gut, trusting the people around you. So I have a very relaxed leadership style because I have very smart people who work with me. So there's no micromanaging, and I trust that they bring me good ideas and that they accomplish the goals that we set for them. And so far, I've never been disappointed. I think that's made a big difference as I set the vision for the company. I continue my education and working towards the goals that we set. And then I trust that the people that we've hired will do the same.
Wow, I love that. So with that in mind, if, as you kind of go about your career and your adventures, I'm sure you run into people, especially young women, who look at you as sort of this role model to say, wow, you're running your own network and you go on these incredible adventures. And what advice do you give them? What do you say to them when they say, I want to work either in the outdoor industry or even in production and in media and TV?
I do have a lot of young ladies reach out, and it's been, over the past 10, 15 years been happening. And I try to respond to every single one of them. I do donate my time to young ladies who are wanting to get into the industry, no matter what part of the industry that is. If they want to run camera, if they want an office job, doesn't matter. I also share contacts with them. I'll kind of get on the phone with them, make sure I know what their goals are, and kind of advise them, make sure they have instant contact to me when they need me as a mentor. I think the reason I'm so passionate about that and open about that is I wish someone had done that for me. I didn't have someone I could call who was a female in a leadership position that I could trust. My advice to those girls is always step number one, surround yourself with the right people, because that will make or break anything that you are trying to do. If you fall in with the wrong crowd, if you don't have the right people around you, bad decisions get made. And this is a small industry. We work in a kind of everyone knows everyone. And, if you make the right connections and really build that credibility, you can go a long ways and build your skill sets and have a long, wonderful career here. But if you don't have the right people around you, it's very easy to get caught up in the noise, and it just doesn't work out for a lot of people who don't make those right choices early on. I've tried to remain a big advocate for women specifically who really genuinely want to work in this business. It was my dream years ago, and I got lucky in a lot of ways. I was right place, right time, but also made a series of good decisions. And, I want that for them too. One of these days, one of those girls is going to come take my job, and she needs to be prepared for it.
Wow, that's a really cool sentiment. So speaking of kind of you living the dream, when you look back on your career, especially at Carbon, but what's kind of the highlights, some of the adventures that you've been on that really stick out in your mind?
Oh man, I have been so blessed. I've been able to live my dream for a lot of years, and it's been a lot of hard work. But I mean, even right now, I'm sitting in a wall tent, talking to you, and I'm still running the company from here. I work, 4 or 5 days a week, and then I go hunt on the weekends, or if I have half a day, not a lot of phone calls, I'll go out that day. So to me, this is my dream. I'm living it right now. But over the years, I've been blessed to see the growth of the company that I love more than I've ever loved another company. I would say one of the major highlights, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. So CarbonTV is the official video streaming partner for SHOT Show. I facilitated that relationship because I had worked with the NSSF for years before I took over this business. I remember being at SHOT Show in my hotel room, and I turned on the TV and it said CarbonTV, official video streaming partner of SHOT Show. And it was in every hotel room that year. They put it right there front and center. Just the joy that brought me. And it's not even like a big money deal. It's not even something I had to fight that hard for. But I think seeing something like that where we are representing a massive industry as the streaming partner for the biggest trade show. And then from there, we took it and just started doing it with all the trade shows. And it's like, oh, well, why not just keep doing the same thing for all of them? The reason that came about was SHOT Show had been putting their video content that's created that week on YouTube, and censorship made sure nobody could ever find it. Again, right place, right time, surrounding myself with the right people. But it's been a lot of that over the years. I'm really proud of the big moments, but I think paying attention to the small things and really not letting those small victories slip by unnoticed turns into a big thing.
I love that answer. Well, and you brought up an interesting point that I'd like to ask about, which is especially in the 2A space and even with hunting, the social platforms have been a challenge. I wonder, because you mentioned politics and election years earlier, and with this most recent election, it seems like it's sort of a split deal where on one hand, on the 2A side, things are going to get a little easier, but on the other hand, on the conservation side, things are getting a little funky. So what's your take on kind of where we're at and where we're headed?
Yeah, so I think everyone on the 2A side and the gun side can take a big sigh of relief right now. That's the energy that I'm feeling from the people I'm talking to pretty regularly. I think that things are going in the right direction on that side. Unfortunately, state to state, a lot of the legislation that's up in the air right now, it's unfortunate. It's really difficult when we have good messages to put out and nobody's hearing those messages. So I'm encouraging more people to speak up, create video content about what you're passionate about. Do it in an ethical way, in an educated way, if that's possible. But I think that having those conversations and normalizing the conversations around those issues is vital. I know in my home state in Arizona, there's some stuff going on right now, and our voices really need to be heard, but it takes showing up. You have to show up to those commission meetings. You have to show up and make phone calls and really have purpose behind it instead of just, oh, I disagree with it, but I don't know why. I think more people should be doing their research. And one way to research is to watch video content about the thing you want to research. There's some smart people out there putting good messages out. We saw it last year with the gun control issues and, the political stuff going on. There was a lot of bad, but there was a lot of really good messaging coming out that was very well thought out and very mature of people. Yeah, I think that if we as a media streaming company can make even a small difference, moving things in the right direction, I'm very open to that. We try not to get too political. We try not to use our position, to try to persuade people of one thing or another. But I also believe in free speech at CarbonTV. If it's legal and ethical within boundaries, I think it's a beautiful thing to help people put those messages out there.
Well, I love that. And that kind of ties into one of the last kind of platform questions I had, which was, it's interesting that on the social side of things, for better or for worse, it seems like there's 2 or 3 really dominant platforms, and at least 2 of them really don't like our content. So I think at least on the 2A side of things, it's been very challenging. X has opened up, but it's turned into sort of the Wild West. But on the longer form video side, when I turn on Roku now, and I mean, I have like 4 platforms that I basically watch on a regular basis. Yours is one of them. But then there's like 30 or 40 that I've never even opened. And it seems like that list, because it like auto updates and there's just more and more every day. And I'm like, I don't even know what half of these are. And at what point is this too much? Or is there never a point where it's too much? I remember at one point when we reached like peak cable, there were so many channels that it got kind of ridiculous. And now the whole cable thing has sort of collapsed. So with streaming, like how segmented is too segmented, and where do you guys stand in all that?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we actually moved into what they call fast channel distribution. We were one of the early front runners, and it was the Wild West. I didn't even know what a fast channel was, but I think that's kind of what you're describing. It's free ad-supported television. There's tons, hundreds of networks out there that just do that. So basically, we program, it's a digital distribution, but with a programming schedule. So at this time, on this day, this show is going to air. So it looks very linear. It looks like the old cable networks, but it is still considered digital, all trackable, just like everything else that we do. And at first, I thought it was a little silly because, like you said, how many things can people possibly watch? But the more we tested out that market, there's a ton of traffic there. You would be shocked at how many people want to brainlessly watch something that's within the realm of what they're interested in. So when they turn on the CarbonTV Fast channel, they don't know what's going to come on next. It's not like video on demand where they're selecting one of our programs and then they watch that. It's kind of like, surprise, this is on next. And I think we're moving back to a certain point where people kind of want that. They're making so many decisions every day, they don't want to decide what to watch that night. So they'll just turn on the fast channel, they'll turn on the type of programming they want and kind of be pleasantly surprised at what comes on, kind of like the old days, I grew up without television as a kid, so I didn't ever have that experience, but I know that that was the way that it was. And I think there's a portion of our society moving back into that direction. As a digital network, again, it was my job to kind of see the future and say, oh, well, that's not just a trend, that's something that's really going to happen. We invested into that, I think 2.5 or 3 years ago, and it's gone really well. It's a big part of the business now.
That's really interesting. And I kind of get it. Like take your hands off the wheel and just turn something on. It's kind of nice. It's like when you're on an airliner, you can just sort of watch whatever's going on. Yeah. Interesting.
I actually pitched an idea to my team 2 years ago. I don't know why we never, I need to ask them why we never did this, but we have it all developed, ready to go, where when people go to Carbon TV, they can click a button and it will just randomly select something from our library to show them. It's kind of like back when Google did a similar thing, and they might still do it, where it can say, it's a button that they have on Google that says, I'm feeling lucky. And when you click it, it just randomly Googles something and you don't know what it's going to be. And so we were kind of taking a page out of that book. And I thought, I think there's a lot of people who might not want to decide what to watch. They just want to watch something that's within these parameters. And the cool thing is, someone like YouTube could never do that because there's so much random stuff on YouTube. If you were interested in watching a gardening thing and suddenly you're watching a guy show you how to fix a lawnmower, that's not interesting to the same crowd. But with us having just like a very niche type of content, it's totally possible to do that.
That's really interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So
That's
now that I've
cool.
said it out loud, I'm probably going to launch that in the next couple months.
Get on it fast because someone's going to hear this and they'll do it.
I
But
know.
that's cool. The reason we call the show Only the Strong Survive is because business leadership is really hard, and the majority of most businesses fail in the first 5 years, and it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to kind of get through that first 5, 6, 7 years. And obviously, you guys are kicking butt. As you think back on your career, the way I learn, unfortunately, I wish I learned from books, is I learned by making mistakes. And then I just say, okay, just don't do that again. So think back on your career. What's the biggest mistake you made and what'd you learn from it?
The biggest mistake I made was knowing the truth and not acting on it fast enough. Whether that comes to people who were on the team who didn't belong there, and just because of the culture of our company, taking it easy and not wanting to disrupt things, but knowing in my heart that the right thing to do would be to make a change, or seeing something in the company that in my gut I knew needed to change and not acting on it fast enough. I think that as a leader, you have to make hard decisions. That's probably a big part of the reason why companies fail in that first 5 years. It's a lot of hard decisions, a series of them every day, repeatedly. And if you're not good at having hard conversations and moving really quickly on them and getting it out of the way, everything else starts to falter. It's like the bad apple in the basket. If I could go back in time, I would trust my gut and make decisions happen a little bit faster. I'm proud to say that we have changed that. Now, when we have a good idea, it happens quick. If I have a bad feeling about something, the change happens instantly. So with experience and years of, making mistakes and learning from them, you kind of get better at that and more comfortable with waking up in the morning and not knowing what the hard decision that day is going to be, but knowing there will be one. I would say that for anyone out there who's just starting off a company or creating your own business and you really want to run it legitimately, making quick decisions and not just sitting there thinking about it for too long. Trust your gut.
Yeah, well said. And boy, I think that is true. Well, Julie, this has been awesome. What's the best place for people to find you, to find Carbon TV, keep up with everything you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm more of an Instagram person than I'm not really on Facebook. My team has my Facebook login. I don't ever go on there. I'm on Instagram if you want to find me personally, but it's mostly just farm animals on my Instagram these days. I'm Jules McQueen. And then Carbon TV, I highly recommend everybody go check it out. One thing that I've started saying a little bit louder now is we are free. We do not charge people to watch our content. It is 100% free all the time on any device, and you can find it literally everywhere. We don't even make people sign in. So if you don't want to give us your information, that's cool. We still think you're going to love the content. So Carbon TV is, no matter where you're streaming, where you're watching, if you have a connected TV, just search for Carbon TV. Obviously, our social media team is amazing. They're constantly putting stuff on there for the different shows and producers and keeping it really interesting. I highly encourage everybody, even if you're not into hunting or fishing, there's so many other great things on there, including podcasts and documentaries and just incredible films and great stories from people who love the outdoors.
Love it. And highly recommend it. So if you're listening to this and you haven't checked it out yet, I recommend you do. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for calling in from camp. That's really cool. So really appreciate it. Enjoyed your the talk. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Only the Strong Survive. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, leave a review, or check us out on YouTube. See you next time, everyone.